Today I would like to start with a new topic, a topic that we could have used already in the past. The topic is RxJS, Reactive Extensions. We briefly talked about this library before when we took a look at the structure of a typical Angular project, because in the project.json we found this reference to a library which is called RxJS. RxJS stands for Reactive Extensions for JavaScript. Reactive Extensions is quite an old project. It has been, I think, invented by somebody at Microsoft many years ago. It was, as far as I can remember, originally developed in the C# area, but it grew so popular that in many languages nowadays you have RxJS. So you can use the things that you learn here in C#, in Java, in JavaScript, in TypeScript, and many other languages. So what is this RxJS all about? Essentially, it's a collection of helper methods which operate on top of the observable pattern. We talked briefly about the observable pattern before. Can you remember what an observable is? It is an object where an outsider, an observer, can take a look at, and the observer is going to be notified whenever something interesting happens. For instance, an asynchronous operation has completed, then the observable pushes, and that is a very important concept, it pushes information to the observer. So in our case, the user interface, for instance, could be the observer, because whenever an asynchronous operation completes, we would like to display the result on the user interface. So our TypeScript code or our user interface is the observer. What could be the observable? Well, the observable could be, for instance, a button. Whenever the user clicks a button, then the button, the observable that monitors the button, sends a message, an event, to the observer. And in this case, the observer is our TypeScript project, where we have, for instance, a click handler that should be executed whenever the user clicks the button. So a button, a user interface element, could be an observable. Another observable, which we already used, is a web API call. If we call a web API, the browser is doing the network traffic in an asynchronous way. So you're just initiating the network call, but then it's done for you. You have to wait until the browser actively notifies you, I am done. And this is done through an observable. So the network call, the HTTP client.get or post or whatever, is an observable. You will be notified once the network request has been completed. Therefore, you are the observer. The network, the HTTP client, the network client, is the observable. Get the idea? The third thing that is an observable, we have seen that last week. Can you remember we had this routing stuff where we saw the routing parameters? The routing parameters can change. I told you if you have something like a next customer, previous customer button, and you click the next customer button, the route changes, the route parameter changes, maybe from customer 5 to 6. And again, the customer parameter, which comes from the router, is an observable because it can change. And very important concept of observable. And now listen closely because this is a key concept. A very important concept of observable is the concept of pushing. The observer does not define when he gets the data. So it's not that the observable sits there and says, I will be active until somebody asks me whether something has happened. This would be polling. It's the other way around. The observable actively pushes data to the observer whenever something happens. That's a very important concept. So it's not like a for-off loop where you as the consumer say, give me the next item, give me the next item, give me the next item. It's the other way around. You as the consumer, you're just registering a function, and the observable will actively call this function whenever something's going on. Okay? No, we don't need Skype for business. Okay, so let's give it a try and let's write a little bit of code. not add a lot of logic to our application. I will just stay here in the app component and I will focus on just this one. Let's do the following. Let's say we have a constructor. Let's say we have a do something method, something with Rx. And in the UI up there, we just add a button, and this button has a click method, and we say do something with Rx. That's all we do, and we call it start. Good, that's all, that's right. npm start. Let's get rid of this line. Will run in a second. That's good. Should be done in just a few seconds. Good. And localhost 4200, and we should see a start button. Nice. Let's put the console here on the right that we can output some interesting stuff on the console. That's good. Console.log. Let's start. Just that we see when the program is starting. If we click on start, we get something in the console, everything fine, everything set up. So if we would like to work with RxJS, we have to import RxJS. Import something, I don't know what yet, from RxJS. Here it is. This is this reactive extension stuff. You can Google it, RxJS, and you will find some interesting stuff. You will see that the homepage of Reactive Extension, independent of the language, is reactivex.io. This is the homepage of RxJS. Generally, RxJS dev, you will find the documentation there. Please note that RxJS is not just usable with Angular. You can use it if you want with jQuery. You can use it in Node.js server-side programming. Wherever you do JavaScript, RxJS is there. But it has a close relationship with Angular because Angular is built on top of RxJS, so Angular uses RxJS. So you have quite a bit of information here. If we take a look at our reactivex.io, and you can say choose your platform, and here you see there are many languages which support Rx in one or the other way. They differ slightly, so don't think that if you know RxJS, you are an expert in Rx.net, for instance. They differ slightly, but the core concepts are always the same. So if you understand the core concepts, everything is fine. So let's get started. The first thing, what we do is we are going to import the observable. This is one of the most important classes, and let's create an observable. Let's say const observable equals to new observable. Observable gets, as you can see here, a subscribe method. This is the method of the observer. No, that's wrong what I'm saying here. This is the method that will be called as soon as an observer starts to listen. Okay? So we provide a method, and if somebody says, I am interested in you, this method will be called. It's called onSubscription. So whenever somebody subscribes, and then it can do something. For instance, in an asynchronous fashion, and it can push some data out to the subscriber. Let me show you what that means. So, for instance, we can say, this will be our subscriber, and let's create a new method. And if our observer would now like to talk to the subscriber, it will say subscriber.next, and then it can push any kind of value to the subscriber. Let's say, let's push 1, and 2, and 3. Something like this, 2, and 3. This observable is now inactive. It does Nothing. Because nobody is interested. Get the idea? An observable where nobody is listening is cold. It's dead. It does nothing. It's inactive. If we want somebody to listen, well, then we have to call a method. We can say observable.subscribe. Now we are in the role of the subscriber, of the observer. Now we say we are interested in what's going on. And here we can specify 3 different methods. We can specify a method that will be called whenever something interesting happens. We can specify a method, optionally, that is called whenever an error happens. And we can specify a method which is called when the observer says, I am done. The observer can say I am done by saying observer, or subscriber in this case, complete. Dear subscribers, don't worry, nothing will come from me anymore. Okay? So let's use this syntax here. It's easier. We say value, and then we say console log I got value. Get the idea? This is the next method. This method, this here, will be called whenever the observable says next. Get the idea? Okay. Let's save this thing and let's take a look. Here, start, and you see, this is from the observer, from the one who monitors the observable, and it was sent by the observable. Get the idea? So somewhere deep in the Angular code, in HTTP client, there is something similar. This is very strongly simplified, but in general it works exactly like that. The Angular code pushes data when the network call is ready to us by calling next on the subscribe. Got it? Questions? This can run in an asynchronous fashion too. So what we can say is we can say set timeout. For instance, something like this. Let's wait a little bit. Let's wait for, let's say, 250 milliseconds, something like this. And we can continue to push data. We can say, send me a 4, send me a 5, and then I'm done. Let's quickly think about what's going on here. Here is a break. At that point in time, we are triggering an asynchronous method. We are waiting for 250 milliseconds. We are, let's say, simulating database access, or simulating a web API call. We are simulating waiting for a button to be clicked. Here we trigger an asynchronous method. And this kind of code, this is exactly for what observables have been made. From the viewpoint of the subscriber, it doesn't matter whether the calls are synchronous or asynchronous. The subscriber will just receive the information. Got it? Let's try that. Save it. And we'll see if we click on. Click 1, 2, 3. Did you see the difference? It waits, let's say 1000, then it's clearer. Let's take a look at the console. I will enlarge it a little bit and click on start. First 3, 4, 5. Got it? This is exactly what we want to do. If the observable would like to push some error data, the observable can do that. The observable can say, subscriber, dear subscriber, something bad has happened. Something bad happened. Okay? This is how the observable would signal to the subscriber that something bad has happened. Get the idea? So we can, if we want, go here and say, give it the error message, error, console log, oops. Now the second method here will be called whenever the observable says something bad has happened. So let's try that. Click on Start, Got 3, 4, oops, something bad has happened. When an error happens, see, the next down here will never be called again. An error terminates the observable. At least in the code that we have currently. We can change that behavior later on. Clear so far? Okay? So what have we learned based on that sample? We have learned an observable is completely inactive as long as nobody is listening. Once somebody is listening, the observable starts to work. The observable can push data. Push is the important concept. Can push data to the observer, and the observer registers functions, as you can see here, that are called automatically whenever the observable pushes data or error or whatever. Clear so far? Good. Now that should be pretty obvious, but that's not super impressive, to be honest. There has to be more about this RxJS because that is nice, but it's not mind-blowing. RxJS is kind of mind-blowing. Now let's do some other things. First, let me show you a very convenient helper method. It's called off. Yeah, question? Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
No. A very convenient helper method. The helper method off enables us to turn any kind of values, for instance, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, into an observable. So in that case, we will give it a bunch of numbers, and what we will get back is an observable of numbers. Okay? We are turning just a bunch of numbers into an observable of numbers. And what will off in that case do? It will take these numbers and push them to the subscriber. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It will just call next for the given values. Get the idea? A very convenient way. We are saving a lot of time compared to all these things. So now we can again take exactly the same code, see it here, and just append it to the off method. Much simpler, right? Now we don't have an error, so make it even more simple and say just the value. Okay? And if we try that, start, we will see, let's comment out this thing here to make it very clear. So just keep this off here in, and we'll see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Right. Does exactly what we want to have. Good? Now is this asynchronous or is this synchronous? Answer, this is synchronous. It just takes six values and pushes them out immediately. There is no waiting, no nothing. So there have to be more methods to construct observables, and there are. For instance, interval. Can you guess from the context what interval might do? Well, it does the same as set interval, but it creates it as an observable. Let me show you how that works. Again, I will comment that thing out, and I will say interval. This is the method. It says period, let's say every 250 milliseconds, and then at the end we just say subscribe. That's all. So again, exactly the same code as we had before, but this time we are not using off, but we're using interval. Let's see what's going to happen. Start. See what's going to happen? Until the end of time, this thing will push a value out to an observer every 250 milliseconds. Understand what I mean? And there are many, many, many additional helper methods, just like interval. Now, that's kind of nice, but it runs forever. How do we control this stuff? Well, any kind of observable gives me back, when it recreated, a subscription. So, we have three things here. We have the observable, we have the observer, or in that case I'm going to call it the subscriber. And in the middle we have the subscription. The subscriber has a subscription on the observable. Kind of complex, I will repeat it. The observable is this interval stuff. The subscriber, our console.log. So the subscriber has a subscription. We can save this subscription. We can just say const subscription equals to. And then we can use regular JavaScript, something like set timeout. Let's say we are going to call subscription dot unsubscribe after, let's say, 5 seconds. Try that. Click on start. It's going to tick and tick and tick and tick, and after 5 seconds it should stop. It stopped. Got it? So it's like a newspaper. It's like a newspaper subscription. I order it, I will get it for a certain amount of time, and then I can cancel the subscription. Let me down the shape. Get the idea? This is super important, and if you do more Angular development, you will definitely make this mistake. Any observable that runs forever, for instance, listening on a button, it will run forever until the button is removed. Any observable that runs forever has to be unsubscribed. If you forget to unsubscribe, you have a memory leak. Your program will allocate memory, will never give it free, and bad things will happen. Okay? But things get more interesting. We can control it in a smarter way. We can remove this subscription stuff here, and instead we are now importing another magic of RxJS. But this time we are going to import from operators. Okay? And the first thing that I would like you to import is the operator take. Now let's see what we can do. We can do a .pipe, and there we can say take 5. Can you guess from the context what this stuff now does? It takes the first 5 elements, lets them through the pipe, and after that it automatically unsubscribes the subscription and stops listening. Let's see. Click 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that's it. Nice, isn't it? Do we have to unsubscribe now? No, because the take automatically cares for unsubscribing once it has been done. Get it? Okay, that seems kind of nice. What else can we do? Lot. Let me format that a little bit differently. This is the usual way of formatting non-trivial RxJS processings. You always have here this observable, and then you have a list of methods called line after line with these dots. Okay? So what else can we do? We can, for instance, do a map. Now, what could the map do? We could, for instance, say map x goes to x multiplied by 2 and then take 2. Take 5. Do you understand the principle? What will be the output? Well, let's give it a try. It will be 0, 2, 4, 6, 8. It is the value multiplied by 2, taken 5. Get it? Next one. We can, for instance, do a filter. Guess what filter does? Filter x goes to x lower equal 2, for instance. Multiply by 2. And now it's important whether we do the map first and then the filtering, or whether we do the filtering first and then the map. And now I think you get why this is called a pipe. We take the value and push it through a pipe. And while going through this pipe, the values are filtered, translated, turned into different things, and so on and so on. Okay? So let's give it a try. It will start 0, 2, and then we are done because the filter mechanism cared for dropping all values which are greater equal to. Any questions so far? Clear? Good. Next one. The next thing I would like to show you is, for instance, something like this, concat. Let me do the pipe here. And remove the filter. Just take a look. Let's start it. Concat, it's the wrong. Let me remove. Let me shuffle around it a little bit. Let's do that. Yes, that's good. Let's do that one. Let's do that one. Now, I will run it again. Please take a look at the timing. Slow, faster, and we got 02468, 02468. But the second row of numbers was faster. Let's take a look what is going on here. Essentially, we said tick every 250 milliseconds and take 5 elements. And when you are done, concat, so at the end of the first ones, append another set of intervals, but this time we take 100 milliseconds, again take 5, and the total result is put through this map. So now we are combining these pipelines. Get the idea? We take one pipeline, we take the other pipeline, and the concat operator connects both pipelines. Understand what I mean? It can be made more interesting if we do things like merge. Instead of concat, we can say merge. And now we see very, very strange numbers, but I think it makes sense, doesn't it? Because we merge now the values. Now we don't take the first set of values and concatenate it with the second set of values, but now we take the values of the first observable and merge it with the value of the second observable. And depending on the timing, the values float in just as they arrive. Get the idea? There is no way that we can discuss all operators that RxJS can do. This is just the tip of the iceberg. RxJS can do much, much more, but now you get an idea why this RxJS is so powerful. Because you can express really complex applications using this RxJS. Okay? Now, let's take a look what that means for Angular. Let's create a member variable. Let's say this is a public values, and values in our case is an observable of number. Okay, let's do it that way. And now assign this. This dot values equals to, and in this case we are no longer subscribing. We are just putting the values, as you can see here, into a member variable. Got it? Now let's try something like this. Let's say we are going to do a paragraph, and here it doesn't make very much sense what I do now, but it's a good idea to try it. We just say values. Let's give it a try. Whatever's going to happen. Now I can remove that one and click on start, and all we get is an object. Why do we get an object? Well, it's an observable. An observable is an object, so this output doesn't make very much sense. However, we can do the following. We can say, give me an unordered list, give me a list item, and please repeat this list item, star ng4, let v of values async. Now the subscriber is Angular. I don't have to subscribe manually. Angular will subscribe to this observable, and now we can use regular binding. We can just say, show me the value. Get the idea? Well, let's give it a try. It doesn't work. Why doesn't it work? Of course it doesn't work. Of course it doesn't work. I'm sorry, I'm on the scroll. My sample was a poor idea. Very poor idea. Yes. This is much better. This is what I wanted to show you. It was not a good idea to display that in a list, because in a list we would have to do something completely different. So, now it looks clearer. You see? Now Angular is the subscriber, and we see the value here ticking because we have this async. We don't have to do the subscription manually, it is done by Angular. You get the idea? Before, we had here at the end this .subscribe, and we were outputting the stuff on the console. Now we are no longer subscribing. What did I tell you about observables where nobody is interested? They don't exist. They don't run. So if we just say, up here, values, we have an observable that does nothing. But because we add the async here, everything is fine. Because now the subscriber is Angular. And Angular will correctly subscribe and unsubscribe from this observable and display the values accordingly. You know what I mean? Now let's check what that means for our web API stuff. Okay? So today you had to work with a web API that was, where do I have this web API? It's here and here and user. Where is my web API? Where is my web API? Let's open it here. It's a different directory, but we can also take it from the repository that I gave you today. You know what? Let's take the Pokemon. No, let's not take the Pokemon one. Because the Pokemon API is much too complex. So this was your exam. Yes, and let's just download the zip file because you probably still have it on your computers. so we can easily try it. Exactly, here it is. And let's extract it. Nice and right. Good. Now we have run it on port 8080. This is exactly what we wanted. So we can take a look at all the matches. Here they are. Now let's try to access this API, but this time we are not doing it the simple way, but we are going to do it the right way. So let's go to App Modules and add the HTTP module, HTTP client module from Angular common HTTP. This is what you have done today in the exam, hopefully. HTTP client module. Here it is. Once we have the client module, we can go to our component and import the HTTP client. Here it is. And add a constructor. The constructor now takes our HTTP client. This is also something that you should have done today in the exercise. Now let's remove all this demo stuff and do something with this HTTP. So we can say this.http .get of any array. I will not add the type. In your exam you hopefully have added the type. And take the URL. Here. And now let's take a look what we get back. We get now back an observable of any array. And now you should have an idea what the observable of any array is. It is an observable where we can subscribe and we will get the value once everything is okay, once we have received once the browser has received the answer from the web server. Okay? So now with the knowledge that we have gathered, we could, for instance, say, okay, let's add a pipe and let's see if there is something interesting, and it happens there is something interesting. We can, for instance, add a retry method here. Retry is pretty neat because we can here say retry, and guess what retry does? If the web API fails, it retries. You can read the documentation about the details. You see how easy this is? And you can do pretty awesome stuff. Retry is just the first example of what we can do. And because we now know what pipe async does, we can immediately say this is an any array values, and we can say this dot values equals to. Now we are no longer subscribing. We are no longer turning it into a promise. We are just saying values is an observable of any array. And now I can do what I wanted to do before, but my brain was a little bit ahead of, no, I was behind my ideas in my brain here. Now we can do in star ng4 and we can say let v of values pipe async. This is the important stuff here. Let's talk about this for a minute. The get method with the pipe generates an observable. And because of this async, Angular will subscribe and run the for loop once the observable pushes data into a feed. Just like we've seen before. But before we just had numbers, now we have a value array. Let's take a look at the array. As you can see, it's an array of objects, and here we have some IDs. Let's just output player 1 and player 2. Okay? So here, we just say player 1 play it too. That's enough. Just to make sure it really works. Let's take a look. Here, press start. Sorry, v.p1, of course. My mistake. And here we are. I will quickly let that on the screen and let me think about this code, or let you write this code on your computer if you want. Any questions, or is that a little bit clear? Do you understand the idea of this Rx? So what have you learned about Rx here? Rx is an implementation of the observable pattern. Remember the three things: observable, subscriber, subscription. The subscriber has a subscription on the observable. That would not be enough. RxJS doesn't have enough value if it just implements the observable here. But the nice thing is that we get a lot of helper methods. We get factory methods like off and interval and timer and many, many more. We get integration into Angular, and we get the pipeline methods. And remember, map, filter, concat, merge, retry, and many, many more. Okay? For this lesson, it's important for me that you understand the concept, why this observable is important, and how it plays together with Angular. If you want to dive deeper, you have to read the RxJS documentation, and you will find dozens, I think over 100 operators, and each of these operators has a very interesting application when you write applications with Angular. Okay? Any final questions? Otherwise, we're done. Today I don't have any homework for you. I think it's time to relax for a week because you have the exam today. So yeah, and enjoy the weather. Thank you. See you next week.